Hello there, Braden Smith here from Learn to Play the Fiddle. Today I'm going to play for you a lovely jig I've been teaching a little bit recently called the Clare Shout. This is a jig that I learned a long time ago from a fiddle player I used to play with in London, and I'd sort of forgotten about it for a bit, and I've brought it back into my playing again recently. It's a great fun tune. It's also a really good tune for working on a couple of bits of technique, some string crossing in with the bow and some left hand technique as well. So we'll get into that in the second half of this video, but I hope you enjoy this. This is called the Clare Shout. So as I mentioned, this is a great tune for learning a couple of things about two bits of technique, string crossing with the bow and some left hand technique. And it already comes down to this one section in the B part that we'll look at in a bit more detail. But let's go through the whole tune slowly, close up, so that you can work out the notes. So you can probably work out the bit in the B part that's going to be probably the one little snag in here. Most of this tune is fairly straightforward, but you've just got this one little arpeggio section. It's kind of like a broken up arpeggio in the B part. All the notes are really straightforward. This is just notes out of a G major arpeggio, but it's each little block of 3 notes descends, and the whole thing is a gradually ascending pattern. So let's just break it down into those 3 note groups, and each individual group is dead straightforward. It's just putting them together. So here's the first group. G, D, B. So just a G major chord. Next chord. B, G, E. Just another triad. Next set of 3. Just another triad. So if these words arpeggio and triad don't mean anything to you, don't worry. I'll be explaining them in other videos. But if you know what they are, you can spot them here. And the final set. So putting them together. So there's no particularly unexpected notes in here, as is so often the case. It's not about the notes, it's about the transitions. So there's two things going on here that make this slightly tricky. Not really hard, just slightly tricky. There's two things going on in combination. The first is that you need at various points to jump across strings, missing out a string in between. So from the G string to the A string, or from the D string to the E string. So in the first instance, we're going to end on the G string, jumping up to the A string for the next note. The next one's just a single string transition, but here ending on the D string and jumping up to the E string. So getting those transitions really clean is one challenge, and I'll give you a couple of tips in a minute for how you might do that, practice that. And the second thing that's going on in combination is various points where you need the same note on different strings with the same finger working on different strings in consecutive notes. And this, the technique that's important here is what I sometimes call block chords, where you just block out two notes with a single finger. You can also think of them as bar chords if you've played any guitar. So we're going to use the finger, and in this case it's going to be the first finger, and it's going to stay down to play both B and E, and it's just going to stay locked in position. I'm going to show you how I do that. So taking this really slowly, next note is B, but I'm going to play that B with the finger across the two strings, the A and the E string. So here, I don't need to move that to play that sequence. In fact, it's going to stay down all the way through to there, and then we can come up to the E string. And at that point I would release that first finger. Let's just look at that one more time. First finger down. So if you're one of my students, you might have heard me talk about playing the invisible string, and I'll make a video on that soon. But the important thing here is just to learn to keep that first finger in place and play those two notes at the same time. So then the second thing is that bit of string crossing, where you've got to jump from one string across another string and land on the next string. And the way that I would suggest you practice this is just stopping on that note. So play the first sequence and stop there. Learn to get there and hit that note cleanly. You're going to need to be quite decisive with your right hand movement. Again, if you're one of my students, you might have heard me talk about your wing. Think about your wing when you're playing this. That's not a good one. There we go. So just stopping on that note, making sure that that's sounding clean before you move on. And you can practice it in the next sequence as well. So just practicing getting that note clean before you try and continue on to the next notes would be how I would suggest you practice that. So let's just finish by putting in a few simple ornaments in here. We'll keep things simple for now. We'll just put in a few cuts in the end of the A part and some cuts in the B part. So at the end of the A part, for example, you could play just some cuts separating out those repeated notes. And in the B part, I tend to put cuts on these Bs at the beginning of the B part. Just nice and simple. And in general, this tune doesn't need much. It's a lovely melody on its own. I would keep things fairly straightforward for this tune. Great, so I really hope you enjoyed learning the Clare Shout. It's a tune by Bobby Gardiner, which I really love playing, and I hope you do too. All right then, take care now. Bye-bye.